Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the ICT Educator webinar series for 2021. I'm Steve Wright, the statewide director of the ICT sector team of Workforce and Economic Development Department at the California Community College System. And these webinars, we put them together for you by our entire sector team, and they're produced by Nicole Sherman. Our guest speakers all volunteer their time for the sake of student successes in our system. Many of you responded recently to a survey that we initiated. Our intrepid producer, Nicole Sherman, put this together, and we're really pleased by the positive feedback. As you know, we've had over 48 webinars with 4,500 views so far. So what are you guys doing with that stuff? And who are you? So as you can see easily, there's 78% community college faculty, which is our targeted audience. So we're hitting our target. And then how do you use the material? We're really impressed with the fact that a lot of it's shared in class, updated curriculum, and implementing new virtual labs. So we feel like we're fulfilling our mission based on those things. So we had to, we also asked people to provide comments. I think Andy LeBrun gets the comment for award for ICT is the crystal ball of education in California, allowing the cutting edge work done in California schools to travel beyond the campus or state so that multitudes of beleaguered educators can find new solutions to their old problems. I'll tell you, Andy and I are going to have a drink together someday. Okay, and Linda Fisher has been with us for a long time supporting what it is we're basically doing here. And we got a number of others. We'll probably sprinkle them in the future webinars just to keep everybody involved. But thank you very much for responding to that survey. Now, coming up in the next few weeks, we're going to be doing a lot with partners and resources. Next week, we're going to have SynEd, the Synthesis in Education, has been providing faculty support tools and resources focused on student success, and probably jumping in on a lot of strong workforce funding and different projects throughout the state, and they've really come alive with a lot of solutions. So we thought we'd give them some recognition and go ahead and see what they're doing and how you might want to become involved with that resource. Then we're going to be looking at ISACA. Has a lot of IT type certifications that are available to your students. The thing about ISACA that's different from some of the other certification providers is that they have a very robust engagement program afterwards with networks among the people who work in the industry. So students may find that there's more future in that kind of networking thing. So whether they get those certifications or not, but we'll hear about them and their program. And then we're going to be doing a Cisco Talent Bridge and how that employment opportunity network is working. But today is going to be interesting. Today, now, by the way, I'm so old, I remember going to conferences in person. And I used to go to the AACC conference when it was out here in California, and it was always a highlight for me. It's refreshing to see how community colleges throughout the country address student CTE needs in their own unique way. And one quickly realizes that the California community colleges challenges due to our size and numbers are not obstacles that other states have. And they're able to implement things and focus on things a little bit differently than we do. So we can learn a lot from them, even though sometimes it's hard to replicate. And here to talk to us today is Jennifer Worth. Jen is the Senior Vice President of Workforce and Economic Development with the AACC. And rather than take too much of her time, she's going to give us a little overview of work they've been doing. And I think we all need to consider ways that we could be involved with them and what's right for our colleges and that sort of thing. So Jen, you ready to take it?
I am. Thank you so much. Thanks to you, Steve, and thanks to you, Nicole, for giving me the opportunity. It's a pleasure to see so many people on this line. Some of you are dear friends and colleagues, but if you're not, a friend and or colleague yet, I hope that you will take 2021 in just a moment and send me a note. I would be delighted to make sure that that is different and you get on my holiday card list before we get to 2022. I just want to remind everybody, AACC is a membership organization for all the community colleges across the country. We're very honored to be able to support them. But my unit is the Workforce and Economic Development Unit, and my goal is primarily to pilot innovation and scale things to the wider world across the country. And as Steve said, California and states like Texas and a couple others, you guys just operate very differently than some of the individual community colleges. So it's just a different kind of impact. And I would say that there is probably a sister or an akin like minded college to every one of your institutions across the country. So shall go California in any direction, so could the rest of the country. So it is important for us to think about how do we lift up and elevate what's being successful in your locations so that the whole country can benefit. So with that, let me share my screen and just jump into some of the topics that Steve asked me to comment on today. And then I definitely want to leave a lot of time at the end for open discussion. Really fast, the picture you saw earlier was probably taken about a decade ago. I'm honored to have been at AACC now for about 13 years. So I got to see it sort of evolve. We used to have a staff of 2 or 3 under the leadership of a gentleman named Jim McKinney, if any of you guys remember him. But he really prioritized career and technical education and workforce as it stood to sort of revolutionize what community colleges should prioritize. It wasn't really about all the other things. It was about preparing workers for the world of employment and family sustaining wages. That center started out with 3 people, and it eventually edited into one where I now have a team of approximately 10 to 15 people at any given time working on about a dozen projects, and usually they're national. I'm going to highlight 3 of the big national ones, but know that if you've heard for some of the other crazy ones, like who's at AACC working with the band Metallica and figuring out how do we make CTE a little sexier. The Metallica Scholars Initiative is run out of my unit. If you've heard of things around credential clarity with Lumina Foundation, around some of that work, that was likely coming through my shop too. But I wanted to showcase 3 in particular. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our apprenticeship work, and that goes under the title Expanding Community College Apprenticeship, or ECA. I'm going to talk to you about a national initiative called Reskilling and Recovery Network, or RRN. That one is focused on post-pandemic. How do we make sure that we prioritize and reset most effectively? And then I'm going to showcase a little bit about this annual event that Steve mentioned, which is our annual Workforce Development Institute. That is actually happening next week on Wednesday and Thursday. It was a 5-day sort of 4-night event where 750, 800 bodies would get together. I would go coast to coast, California, or I would go to an East Coast, either New Orleans or Florida, always someplace warm the end of January, but always California every other year because we had more community colleges in the state of California. I will not take you through every single session for WDI this year, but I am going to hit on the top 4 because those are the plenary sessions where I want all the attendees to really see what's sort of top of mind for me and the companies that I think we are trying to serve. So that's the agenda for today, and then we'll do some open Q&A. But let me start first with the ECA initiative. For those of you that don't know this, the U.S. Department of Labor gave AACC approximately $17 million in a cooperative agreement. It's not a contract, it's not a grant. It means that we have to work together with them, and we designed it. I helped pen the concept as well as set up the budget, but at the end of the day, I have to deliver 16,000 registered apprentices no later than February 28th, 2022, unless we get a no-cost extension. I put the concept down on paper in an RFP, or request for proposals. I sent that out through our AACC channels together with my colleagues, and we received hundreds and hundreds of applications across the country. There were different ways the colleges could engage. They could come in through consortia, which means they would have at least 3 locations that would be working together. So it could have been 3 individual colleges. It could have been 3 colleges within a state or in a region, or it could have been a system that decided they wanted to use 3 colleges within their system. Individual colleges are independent institutions that are just working by themselves. An individual college had to give me 150 people, at which point I would give them $120,000 over that duration of 3 years. And we would stagger it. They might say, I want more money up front and a little bit in the middle and a tiny bit at the end. The college that were consortia got 3 times as much. So if they were going to get 3 times as much money, they had to give me 3 times as many bodies. So instead of 150 people, they had to give me 450 people. And instead of $120,000 over those 3 years, they got 3 times as much. So $360,000 over those 3 years. That means I ended up having to generate contracts, with no less than those colleges, the 58 plus the 8, but equally with all the other national network partners and technical assistance providers. But at the end of the day, after I ran that RFP in the first, couple of months, I had a total of 106 communities represented across the country. I am in, as many states and territories as you can see. I'm working with 7 global industry partners. I have an advisory board that is stood up that has representation from all across the country. And I am currently working with 31 colleges that are prioritizing being the actual sponsor. If you want to know the exact states, the exact colleges, that list is on the link that is down here in the lower left-hand corner. But for the purposes of timing, I'm just going to move us right into sort of what are the outcomes to date. In addition to working directly with those institutions, I'm also capturing all their best practices because I truly believe that we want the entire system of all community colleges to benefit. It's not just supposed to be for those 106 communities. So right now we are coming up with a virtual apprenticeship network tool, which will be sort of categorized into some of the common themes we're seeing colleges struggle with as it relates to career and technical education and apprenticeship activities. So it might be showcasing some of the best practices, but there's lots of case studies out there. So I care more about how do you implement the program. That's the nuts and bolts of it, but equally you need some stuff for your leadership, maybe really short, brief remarks on what is the return on investment, because you need to very succinctly explain that to a partner or board member. So those kinds of tools are being crafted. Once they get vetted by our leadership team, likely end of January, early February, I'll be able to start pushing those out to the wider community of practice. But all these kinds of tools are being captured right now. I'm also capturing a lot of data. And as I was sharing with Steve earlier, it's not just about how do you implement the program or how do you effectively message, how do you sustain a program, because partners want you to evolve. They can't just keep doing the same thing you've been doing at the first moment of your meeting. What kind of data have you generated so that you can prove that what you're doing is successful, and then giving you some models of examples. So what you see here in microscopic print, you don't need to read it, but I'm going to tell you that I will soon populate that website with those 106 plus different stories, are two different images in the lower right-hand side. What each one of these are representative of a company that we're working with. Lincoln Electric is the welding entity that's on the right-hand side. They are essentially working directly with AACC, and they have served to date 1,233 different registered apprentices through their programs with community colleges. On the left-hand side, you see an individual community college. It's Pima from Arizona, and they so far have served 361 colleges. It also shows you the 7 and 19, if you can see that. Those are the different occupational clusters. There's breakdown on demographic groups, like how many Asian Pacific Islander females that are under the age of 20 have you been working with in each program. I can splice this data any which way I want, but I'm trying to be exceedingly transparent about how we are actually helping educate and train more Americans to be viable in their local labor markets. What you see on that pie chart is what kind of methodology we're using. Is it hybrid? Is it competency-based? Sort of what models are being utilized. So I have this across every program in every state. I'm going to give you guys, though, the national perspective, which is which data points did we aspire to and where are we right now? So when we first started an initiative, not shockingly, you're at zero. It's a giant goose egg. And then everybody gets money and they start to stand up a program, but you got to get staff and you got to get mowing. So we were pretty low initially because it took us a long time to write all those contracts, right? To mobilize hundreds of communities across the country. But very quickly, the programs started to ramp up that were traditional, primarily advanced manufacturing, construction, middle America, I would say younger, middle class, white male, generally, because those programs had already been there and they were just expanding some of their offerings. COVID hit, some of the numbers flattened out, but you're starting to see now that the programs have actually started to grow at a pretty good clip. So I think we're not actually that far away from where our target was supposed to be pre-pandemic. We started with a pretty straight trajectory, but we're back up where we want to be, but it's because those other newer programs are starting to thrive. So let me get into what an example would be. This is the national network synthesis as of December. So I can only pull data from the last 3 months. So you're looking at it as fresh as I can give it to you. Out of the 16,000, I've currently served over 8,500 and actually have served 8,599 exactly. I shouldn't say over. Between January 1st and today, I have served several hundreds more. So I'm well over 9,000 now. But we've mobilized over 661 registered apprenticeship programs in 421 different occupational clusters. You can see we are still trending primarily white. We are still trending primarily male. However, I like to always show, and it's primarily time-based, but we're starting to see the numbers shift.
If I could just cut in for a second, Jen.
Please, go ahead.
I just want to share with everybody that these are very impressive numbers.
Thank you.
A lot of us have been trying to crack the code on apprenticeships for a long time. And when I saw Jen's presentation before, yesterday, I believe, I was like shocked And because I thought apprenticeship was kind of like the boat that we keep waiting to have it arrive, and she's doing it now. We have a lot of California colleges involved,
Yeah.
evidently in Riverside Community College, Moreno Valley College, and Norco College.
Mhm.
Also, I see I'm scrolling down the link on a prior slide, El Camino
Mhm.
and Los Angeles City College.
Yep.
So where it's working out here. And also in a discussion with Jen before the call, based on the AACC involvement and the way that they're structured, they're able to handle apprenticeships where multiple employers along the same student pathway can be engaged. This is something you have typically in construction. But when it comes to IT and other
Yeah.
fields like that, and a student might actually go from one employer to another. So it's not like you just got to find the biggest employer in town to set up an apprenticeship program. You can actually set up a more flexible one that deals with real world job hopping, as long as the skills are accumulating. Now, I hope I
Yeah.
haven't misspoke, Jen,
No,
but
no, no,
that's
it's perfect. I'm actually, no, you're right on point with the next thing I was going to say, which is,
there
we're
we go.
seeing good success, and you're starting to see that our demographics are changing because of I want to argue, and I haven't put this down in a white paper yet, but you can expect that I will be writing it very shortly, that because the federal government made the investment. I never said they gave us cash just to go run around and have fun with. They made an investment. And the reason they invested in community colleges is because they know that we can actually hit a more diversified population, and we can hit more different kinds of programming. So our data, our demographic data is what it is, but I'm very anxious to show you this slide, which is our data compared to DOL data. Now, if you look at the two sources on the bottom, this is a graph I made with my team. I didn't personally. I have a wonderful colleague named Ann Holke and another one, Letitia Ford. But if you look at the blue, you're looking at data that the U.S. Department of Labor gave as far as registered apprentices that were active as of fiscal year 2019. So this is the best of all the aggregated data ever since DOL started capturing their data as of FY 2019. You see they are primarily male, they are primarily white. After that, they're Hispanic, Latino. After that, African American or Black. After that, like you can see where they are. Then our red bar is just ECA. Now, we don't have hundreds of thousands of students because we only have those 8,000 students that we've worked with so far, a little over 9 now in truth, but as of the last reporting period. But if you look at where we are with our work through the community college system, we're actually doing better than they are with females. We're actually doing pretty darn close to the Black or African American. We are actually we're doing better than Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, and I'd say we're on par with American Indian and Asian. So I do think that we're seeing more diverse individuals because community colleges typically are the most affordable, flexible, and inclusive models. So I just want to keep seeing these numbers go up and prove that we can actually encompass more work. Clearly, transportation, advanced manufacturing, and construction, the historically larger apprenticeship groups are the ones that are out in the front. But again, when you saw my line graph, you saw that the numbers are starting to go up again. That's because these other ones, hospitality, healthcare, finance, business, energy, they're growing. So as those numbers trend up, and if you were to ask me to do this with you in another 3 months, I'd like to show you, how far up we're moving along. So that's apprenticeship. I can talk about that a lot more, but the reality is we've got 42 new occupations added to our initiative, and I don't see this work slowing down anytime soon. It's a real feather in our cap, and as much as I can learn lessons and share them with the wider community college practice, I promise you I will, because that is AACC's mission. So let me move us into my second big national initiative that I'd like to hit on, and that is one. I'll just take 1 minute, and that is essentially Lumina Foundation has been a longstanding supporter of higher education and thinking about efficient practice and strategic development. They're not always focused on sort of writing another white paper that gets put on a shelf. They want to do things that will actually make impact in scalable ways. I had been working with our friend from Lumina Foundation, and there were 2 white papers. I hope you all have seen them. If not, I should absolutely make sure that you reference them, but I know Steve has. AACC allowed me during the pandemic to actually write a position paper, which I never typically do. Um, and in that position paper, I talked about why CTE should be first back to campus, because there were the physicality of training programs that required us to be first back. So online education isn't efficient for CTE. If you haven't seen this document, I'd ask you just to like peruse it when you get a moment. But at the end of the day, I asked a bunch of people for their thoughts. And back in March, I wrote down the answers, which were essentially, these programs require us to allow them to be back first. They should be prioritized over the underwater basket weaving. It's underwater welding should take the place of any other programs first and foremost. So, and that's for different reasons. People then said, well, wait a minute, why these ones? So I wrote a second one about a month later. And this one was because it's an economically mindful thing to do. And I scanned a number of different colleges across the country, including your state of California. And I talked to facilities directors and people who were part of the frontline staff and the faculty and the CTE directors that were part of many of the courses that required different kinds of physicality and or dynamic teaching and learning spaces. So people think about cleaning off a table or a desk and chair, but try and sanitize a room that looks like this, if you can see it on my screen right now. I mean, it is a different kind of environment. And you all know this all too well, top to bottom floor, the first responder programs, they're just mainly dynamic. So as a result, I said, you have to lower the student headcount. You're going to have more courses spaced further apart. It's going to slow everything down. It's going to bog the systems down. So we gave them guidance on social distance guidelines for returning to campus, moving around on campus, running CTE programs, what kind of cleaning expectations they should put in place. And then I said, of those activities, these are still the courses that deserve to be back first. This caused a lot of hubbub because some people said, hey, why is CTE prioritized? And I said, for all the reasons above. Your state, California Chancellor's Office asked me if I wouldn't help customize a version of this just for your state. So I'm currently working on that together with the Chancellor's Office. All that said, this funder, the Lumina Foundation, said, I read those white papers too. Let's see if you can't convene together with a national network. So I called some friends at National Governors Association, and the Governors Association and AACC came up with the Reskilling and Recovery Network, passing no money through, not a single nickel. We had about 30 states that raised their hands and said, we would like to be a part of this guidance. So every 2 weeks, NGA and AACC, the National Governors Association, and I were running conversations around bringing programs and governor's offices back under one umbrella. So it was political on the NGA side, but from the AACC perspective, it was not. California definitely showed interest, but at the time you guys had so much going on with the pandemic, the bandwidth just wasn't there. I would like to hope that if we get more money at the end of this month, you would like to join into this network on a go forward. But regardless of whether or not you ever join us, I refuse to keep that information from you. So this site, we actually started to populate all the best thinking. So every time we had a meeting around who the collaborative network were, what the innovative tools were, we captured it. So if you want to look at what the states were talking around data inputs or how they were looking at their information going forward, because you can't always plan on going back to what you wanted to be. And here's a great example. I was working with the state of Montana, and Montana had to go down 14 different job categories on their unemployment list to say, that's a family sustaining wage we want to have Montanans or Montana folks go after post-pandemic. The first ones were line cooks and hairdressers. And they said, we don't necessarily need the governor's offices and the community colleges to focus all of our attention and energy and funding post-pandemic on line cooks and hairdressers. We do want to think about what are the right jobs that we want to challenge everybody to become after this pandemic is over. So they had to make the strategic but hard decision to go down to that 13th and 14th spot. So each one of these things sort of encapsulates stories, but also tools that were there. And there is going to be a much more robust site that we are standing up. I just thought I'd show you what sort of the early stuff was right now. But that is another initiative that's sort of out there. But again, whenever we learn something, the goal is to share it. And I'd encourage you guys to look at either those white papers or some of these assets here. The last thing I'll name before we get into open Q&A, because I think I'm going at a good clip here, Steve, unless you tell me otherwise, is that every year I run an event called the Workforce Development Institute. And as I said, this would have been a year that I would have been in California. I would have brought 750 different bodies from around the country, tribal lands, territories, big urban areas, small cities, to meet with you and to basically have a discussion around what were the top conversations in the world of workforce and economic development. Again, I won't go through the entire program. Registration's still open if you want to go. It was $1,000-ish to attend previous years in person. Now it's down to $300. So if you want to register, you'd be welcome to. We have approximately 500-600 bodies registered right now online, which is good. I'm clearly not going to make the same profit, but it's still a good activity. So I hope some of you at least can attend. But I do want to hit on the plenary sessions, because these are the ones where I try to always think about the words relevant, competent, and competitive. If I'm not helping the institutions, community colleges generate students that are relevant, competent, and competitive, we're just kind of talking as academics to talk to one another. Companies won't care. So if we make our students relevant, competent, and competitive, then I think that we're on the right track. So let me just name the sessions very briefly for you, and then I'm happy to open this up to the larger discussion. There's only 4 because I channeled it down to 2 days only. It only happens between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. For Wednesday the 27th and Thursday the 28th. That's because I wanted to allow our West Coast folks to not have to wake up at 5 a.m. and participate. You're welcome. The first session is resilience, and I actually have 4 colleges that will be presenting. I wanted to be unabashed about having to make difficult decisions and having hard moments in your community during the pandemic. Opening will be Dr. Brian Albrecht, President and CEO of Gateway Technical College in Wisconsin, who had to deal with the Kenosha riots. Many of you will remember that, but he had to try and keep his community calm and then focused on education during that experience. And that didn't just happen in one moment. It happened throughout the days and weeks before, and then certainly after. Second is Dr. Alex Johnson, President, Cuyahoga Community College from Ohio. He's going to talk about first responder programs. After there were some moments around the country that dealt with social unrest, he had to make sure that he was trying to get students to come into his fire and most oftenly the police cadet programs, because there were students that were leaving in droves. They said, why would I want to go be villainized? I don't want to be a police officer. I'm getting out of this line of profession. Well, that's not a good answer. We need police officers. We need firefighters. We need people on the front lines, but those jobs needed to be dignified. And how that executive went out and proactively promoted those trades in the communities and all the other trades that might have been not seen as lovingly in that moment, I thought was a leadership example worth showcasing. The third person is Dr. Darion Pollard. She is the president of Montgomery College in Maryland. She made some really bold budget choices. Sometimes people will say you have a budget to do this, and you have to make a hard choice to say it, but I need to do that. And that bold budget choice was to actually hand out a lot of laptops that could have walked away, but she knew that her students needed access to technology, and she had to have many a fight with some of her partners and leaders that wanted to challenge her, but she stood by her choice, and I think that that's a bold thing that is worthy of celebrating. Last and certainly not least is Dr. Federico Zaragoza, who's the president of College of Southern Nevada. In Nevada, not just one business shuttered around him, the entire hospitality industry shut down. So how do you help large regions of people that are first-time unemployed? His thinking was pretty exceptional. So again, that's our opening session. Pretty unapologetic, but it sets the tone for, I want you to bring big, bold thinking and your real-time strategies to the discussion. The second one is industry expectations on the new normal of workforce training, recruitment, and management. I'll tell you just the individuals that will be a part of this one are pretty exceptional. This year, I actually got folks that we never had before. The first one is actually from Siemens, not Siemens Foundation, Siemens. And Siemens has this new way of approaching training for all of their workers. They're saying, even after we all get the COVID shot and we come back, we're still going to make our employees work remotely. So you have to now be efficient in working with the team. So if Steve and I are both working at Siemens, and so is Nicole, Steve might be in Australia, Nicole might be in China, and I might be in Topeka, Kansas. They're going to make me work with Nicole and Steve because they want to know that I have the ability to have the cultural competencies and to have my skill sets be at par with a global talent pool. That is a different way of expecting our students to be prepared. So you can't, it used to be teach them how to read, write, and do math, right? And then read, write, and do math and do the particular trade. Now it's read, write, do math, do the particular trade. And we want you to have those interpersonal skills and team building. That's not just work in a team, because Steve, Nicole, and I were all students in Topeka, Kansas, and we all had an assignment from a teacher that said, do a team project, put this together once at the end of the semester. Like the company of Siemens is going to make sure that they are proactively doing that with their own staff, and they are going to expect that kind of employee coming out of our institutions if they're going to hire them. That's a new set of expectations we need to be prepared for with those kinds of global companies. I'll give you another example of another kind of college that would say something. Maureen Tholen is a dear friend who is with 3M. You might think of 3M as like, the tape, and maybe some cases like the medical stuff. She is saying, no matter what occupation, it used to just be N95 masks in the healthcare programs. It doesn't matter what occupation now. Everybody needs to have occupational health and safety programming embedded into every single one of the career and technical education programs. Everybody needs to know about disinfecting, protecting, keeping themselves safe. It's not, it was big in construction. They've got it a lot further along than many of the other trades, but healthcare construction, they know what they're doing, but in all the trades, 3M is going to be saying this is where they should go. CVS, going to make some really big decisions because they already have, and they're going to make some big announcements. They're going to proactively go out to certain cities and make commitments, big thousands, tens of thousands of numbers of people who were formerly in the correctional facilities coming back out and going into work into their places of employment. I mean, they're saying everybody needs to be working, otherwise America is not optimized and it's not in a good place. So those are the kinds of discussions that you'll hear on the second session. But again, pretty bold thinking. The following morning, which is Thursday, January 28th, it's Thursday, we have never let a good crisis go to waste. You'll hear from a bunch of leaders that are basically going to say, we're post-pandemic in a moment, and when that happens, what should we hold on to with our dying breath, and what should we blow up? What systems aren't working anymore, and how do we become more efficient and effective? So do we get rid of the workforce system, or do we really think about how do we reframe what our community colleges are doing with those kinds of partners? So that should be interesting. And the last session is the technology of workforce training. Last year, I put on the stage Apple and IBM. And this year, I brought Apple back to talk about what is the future of IT going to look like, but I wanted to counterbalance that with, IT isn't only what many people, not all of us, but many people think of as IT. IT is embedded into every trade. I could argue that the electrical line people that are up on, a pole, like they're dealing with IT in many facets. The automotive mechanics and the machinists, the diagnostic tools, they are dealing with IT. So I wanted to put a counterpoint up to Apple. So I invited Carhartt to speak. So Carhartt is actually going to talk about not just the technology of, what kinds of coding and expectations do we want our students to do, and what kind of online technology interfaces do we want them to understand, but also where's the technology going, not just from what they can use, but to what they wear and what they are actually surrounding themselves with. So there's new technologies now, you'd be shocked as far as the wearables. Pockets are getting bigger, hoods are getting changed, and it's not just because I want to help a company figure out who should they be brand loyal to. But if we don't think about protecting our students and our faculty and the teachers and the administrative staff that are supporting these things in the most efficient and effective ways, then we're not really doing a service to the entire country as they think about resetting and being bold. So Apple and Carhartt will be the two key speakers, and then I'll have a couple of other executives from community colleges respond to that. I'll highlight two other sessions, which is one is Respond with Resolve. This is about how public information officers are often going to be the ones, I think, that need to have good information, because career and technical education is, if my white papers are right and we are going to be the first ones back, programs are going to open and then somebody's going to get sick and then programs are going to shut down. Programs are going to open and somebody's going to have an issue and there's going to be a lawsuit. Somebody's going to have a problem. But if we're not using consistent language and we're not all talking about CTE first, we'll have a problem. So I wanted some professional public information officers to give us their best practices on their panel. So if you join WDI and you are in this audience, I would suspect that would be one you would want to listen in on. And then last but not least, for those of you who want to know where the funding will come from and where the policy agenda will be, I only allowed Department of Labor, Commerce, and Education to speak this year because it was right after the election. I didn't allow any politicals to talk because my boss and I knew that was a bad choice. We decided to keep it to career staff. So Dr. Bumpus was very smart in helping me plan for this, but he approves every structure, every session, and every speaker. So I am very honored that he let me put this program together, and I'm excited to execute it for him, you, and everybody else across the country by next week. But with that, let me get off of the show and let me let you see my face as you wish and answer questions, because I couldn't see a chat box when I was showing Steve. I didn't read anything. So do you want to channel questions to me, or do you want me to take a minute and read?
Yeah, we'll see what pops up in the chat box, and we'll let some people ask questions. But first, I just like to say, wow, you're doing so much, and this is when you actually asked me to help the chancellor's office to help with a grant that you were doing, and that's how we met recently. And I asked you to do this, and from the memory of all those conferences I attended, and I can see right now from the topics you discussed that you're handling the issues that we're facing in California in myriad ways, and it's just so good and refreshing for us. And I think we can ask about some of the particulars, but I think one of the things I hope we talk about before we're done is how can we in California become more involved with the AACC and begin to include these programs and these working committees and these different approaches in our colleges. I mean, today could be a first step, but I mean, what is it we could do more? Because I think at the time we're in right now, with so many changes occurring in the workforce, we can't just sit around and navel gaze. We've got to talk to people that are doing things. How can we get more involved?
So that's all good questions. I'm sorry, and I'm listening to you, and I'm also reading the chat functions. Well, the first thing I think is figure out where you want to get involved. So if you go on the AACC Workforce Development website, you can see the myriad of projects that my team and I touch. I only gave you a sample today. I did not show you everything. By the way, I gave you like 4 minutes of synthesis on top of what in some cases is 3 to 4 years worth of work. So I did not do any of that lightly, and I certainly didn't do it by myself. I have a wonderful team, and I want to give them all credit for it. But if you should desire that you want to learn more about the Reskilling and Recovery initiative related to what we're doing with the Governors Association, send me an email, and I can talk to you about that together with my colleagues that are sort of helping me run point on that. And we might, because I am on all those meetings, I would probably even channel you to the exact right person, but I just want to make sure I do it appropriately. If you care more about just attending the conference and getting top line of where is AACC's head and what are the big things on the horizon, I would really encourage you to ask your colleagues or your bosses if you need to, or just to swipe your card for the $300 and just attend next week and just do it, just to hear the kinds of discussions and then to see the kinds of people that we showcased. I do know that not every, more than one person was asking for the Apple person. It was Jennifer Dame, D-A-M-E. She is a national market segment executive at higher education sales at Apple. I will be very clear. Apple is a very hard speaker to secure. I had to do a lot of work to get them last year, and because I got them last year, I was able to get them again. But they are very specific about what questions they can ask and answer off the cuff. So it's not. I just don't want to set you all up for. I'll send her a note, and I'm sure she'll give me like 5 pages of customized. There's a lot of protocols and processes for many of these people, as you know. But yes, especially to put them up on a national stage. So, but that is the speaker for that session. Other ways to get involved, the apprenticeship. Thanks, Nicole, for popping that in there. The apprenticeship initiative for strands 1 and 2, the actual funding that goes out from AACC, all those contracts were signed over a year and a half ago. Those are closed down now. However, should you want to learn and be a part of the toolkit and or potentially want to get partnered up with the industry partners, which are in strand 4, take a look at those partners. Maybe you want to connect with the Lincoln Electrics, or maybe you want to connect with the IBMs, or maybe you want to connect with the Lockheed Martin, and then come in under their numbers and under their dollars if there's an opportunity for you there. So look at that. Don't presume it's all shut down, but me giving a direct contract to any institution is now closed for that particular initiative. But I would say take a look at the website, see the projects that make the most sense, get a sampling of WDI, and then the other thing is maybe have me back, or don't be a stranger and send me an email. I'm going to be pretty blocked up next week with the event, but after that, I usually, my team and I take 2 days off, and then we're back at it. And we're real people. We answer our emails. We don't have admins. I think everyone under the sun has my email, but it's thanks to Nicole, it's also in there too. We're not in our offices, so I can also I'll also pop in my cell phone, which is in the chat box now too. But yeah, we're around. Don't be strangers.
You alluded to the new normal in work, and you talked about the company. It may have been Siemens that is talking about encouraging and forcing virtual work teams. Does that mean then, in the apprenticeship program that you have going nationwide, that people can be apprentices from any state? I mean, should our students now, even though we're in California, start looking for jobs in Ohio? What do you see as the new normal that way?
No, it's a fabulous question. It's a fabulous question. I don't have the perfect answer for you for all industry sectors and all industry partners. I can tell you that that kind of mentality is exceedingly attractive to all the colleges in Appalachia, because now the idea would be if I can get access to broadband and I can actually get connected, I could be working and competing with Charlotte Allen, who is on the line right now from California. So like it creates a whole new set of dynamics for who is eligible to be in the world of work versus sort of get sidelined because they're not geographically in that area. So there are companies like Siemens that I think are naturally trending in that way related to virtual space and place. I think others are opening up not in that arena, but in another one that I'll tell you is equally a hot topic for a lot of the leadership circles I run in, which is skills-based hiring. So people are saying it doesn't matter what the item is that you get anymore, whether it's a certificate, a credential, a degree, a badge, you name it, yada, 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 and a button, a shiny sticker, a star, whatever you want to put on yourself, great. But if you can actually prove that you have the competencies that underpin the skills that I need, I'll take you right here and now. I don't need to wait for you to get that other item name put on top of your forehead. And that's tricky work, right? Because we know as institutions of higher education, we can only validate sometimes what we can comfortably affirm. And that means it's either the time or it's the skill sets, but we don't have one consistent, comprehensive way to assess Jim Bowen. I'm glad you're here with us today, like all of his gifts in an equitable way with Mike Starkey, potentially, if we were to have them in different locations. So a lot of this is creating gray area, but skills-based hiring is something that the companies are not waiting around for. They're going after it. And that's IBM in particular, and a lot of other entities too. So I think between that and the Siemens-like remote world of work, those two are going to be huge pressure points on our ability to service our students and then also retain funding in that way we traditionally have.
Well, it's promising. It's also scary. That means that our local students will be getting competition from people in other parts of the country who maybe have a lower cost of living. And so we're looking at all kinds of scenarios now that could happen. You got to stay on top.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an economic argument. And I mean, I was, everybody makes these choices. Do I go here or do I go there? Community college has always been the most affordable and appropriate and accessible, flexible, right? So that's not the case, but now you're competing not locally only, you're also talking about the movement. But again, we have a minute. This is a time to reset and to reassess. So I'm glad that we're all doing it and also doing it together across your state. Can I ask if there's any other questions? I was trying to pop through. If you didn't get an answer from me in the thread, would you re-ask your question now so it's also at the bottom and I see it first? And then Steve, do you want to take any verbals from the audience? I'd be welcome.
Now's the time.
Okay. Oh, Dr. Ernest Green. Jen, can you talk to your diversity initiatives? I can share with you related to ECA, the data that I showed you. It's not in a public document yet. I sort of showed you the slide. I'm going to present that to the country not tomorrow, next week at our apprenticeship advisory board meeting. But we will do white papers on that and how working with us through apprenticeship activities has diversified the apprenticeship pool. But AACC, outside of the workforce work, I can tell you AACC has a specific division within it. It is under my dear colleague, Mary Heiss's shop. She oversees academic and student affairs. And we have a specific staff member His name is Kevin Christian, and he oversees all of AACC's diversity, equity, and inclusion activities. I would absolutely want you, Dr. Green, to talk to Dr. Christian, because he is going to be vastly more knowledgeable about all community college DEI activity. And I can surely pull up Kevin's email for you right now while somebody else wants to ask a question.
Yeah, we certainly know you want to ask a question if you turn on your video and turn off your muting. That makes it pretty obvious. Anybody else? Everybody a chance here. Okay, we're going on last call.
There's a question about metrics on digital media apprenticeships.
Any metrics on? Okay. Oh, I'm trying to think off of the hundreds of IT apprenticeship title, like categories. I don't have the answer for you in this moment. Kevin Clark, if you don't mind, shoot me an email at myjworth@aacc.nche.edu, and I will forward it to my apprenticeship team people, and I'll have them go pull who is actually doing digital media apprenticeships at any institution. And then I'll see if I can't get you the contact info for whoever the primary point of contact is for that individual college or colleges, as it may be.
And Kevin probably knows the answer to that himself. He's been our warrior working with all of the entertainment companies and the kids in the city of Los Angeles for some time now. So he's right there on the forefront. Thank you for joining us, Kevin. Any other questions today? Okay. Well, I tell you, Jenna, just it's amazing. I'm so glad that we were able to pull this together and everybody can see the depth of AACC. I hope we'll go to the website. People look for ways to get engaged, learn more, whatever. And if there's a particular project or focus area that the audience here would like us to delve into it in some future time, be glad to do it. I particularly, my big takeaway is the success of the apprenticeship program and the way you manage that. I think a lot of us could take a look at that when we're searching for alternatives for apprenticeship. So is the door still open on that? I mean, can we still get started or is that kind of tabled at this time?
No, so the work is still going on. As far as the first two strands, which are direct funding from AACC to institutions, the RFP is closed. So the colleges that are in that network that got the $120,000 or the $360,000, that moment has passed. However, if you wanted to look at that list and see about the companies that are in strand 4, like Lockheed Martin, IBM, if there's a way that you wanted to maybe do a digital media apprenticeship, and that is something that IBM is focused on, to Kevin's question, let me know and I'll see if I can't get them engaged so that they wrap your college into their work, because they got a different set of funding through me. I gave some money directly to the colleges, and then we also gave some money directly to those companies to work with colleges. So there's options there for you. But regardless of whether or not you get cash, of which there's, it's been allocated now for over 1.5 years, so that number is getting smaller. Regardless of whether you get cash, you can still get the benefits from all of the lessons learned, because it's all going to be captured in the toolkit. And I will push the point that I think a lot of people are chattering right now around, should we stop doing apprenticeships because it's the pandemic, and those things usually take longer. And I don't know that I really want to focus on that. Let's just do quick, rapid reskilling things. That is important, but we are never going to say at AACC that we will turn off the apprenticeship spigot. That is another stream of quality talent pipeline pools that are funneling and flowing into the world of the American workforce. So I think it's a very important strategy to keep us educated and trained in the future.
Okay, then, unless there's something else, I don't see anything. Are there any corporations in Southern California that are involved with your apprenticeship program? I think that was Kevin. Okay. Well, we can check that out. I just, at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. And thank you, Jen, for your fountain of knowledge and wonderful resources. You guys obviously work very hard at AACC, and we appreciate that. And a lot of interesting ideas here on how to approach the new future reality of work. And thank you, everybody. See you next week.